Yeah.
Can I record?
Oh,
It's okay.
Yeah, okay, so I start again. Okay.
So
So
it's okay, Vince and George.
Okay, so I'll put a link there, and so if you want to go and see what problem sensing looks like, that's where it is. And the reason, so what I'd like you first of all to hear is each person's impression of problem sensing, and do you find it useful or not useful?
Do you mind? I can't find that link. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So I put on the blue sticker here. Can you see that? All right.
Link to the mirror board, if you mean this.
No, I mean the link to the problem sensing section on Ideascale. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, this is something I'm actually interested in. What if there's a definition of the difference? What would be the still there?
Yeah.
What would be the definition of the difference between the insight sharing from each funding campaign? We've got insight sharing within each fund. It's not within each campaign, and then the problem sensing thing. So I've noticed that the catalyst process improvements is at the bottom. Is there a well-defined difference between the insight sharing and the problem sensing?
Yeah, I mean I mean, I don't think there is personally. Well, no, actually, I mean, the impression I get of problem sensing is that it's a bit like a cross between a suggestion board and an issue management system. So people seem to throw obviously the problems on there, but then also there may be like little formation of proposal. I'm not sure. Is that what you're getting at, George?
Yeah. So I mean, my kind of understanding of it is the project Catalyst problem sensing is more about the process of Catalyst and improving Catalyst itself, whereas the insight sharing is more of here's some specific insights that are relevant, or my experience, or these stats, or this thing that's relevant to some certain campaign or the fund in general, something that we should be taking into account for this specific fund. And that's kind of my interpretation of insight sharing, whereas this Catalyst problem sensing to me is like, yeah, what is the problem with our whole phases and stages and the process and the community advice, all these kind of different things. In the context of Ideascale, I think it's more to do with focused on the problems of Ideascale, because it doesn't really say anything about, is there anything else to talk about? So I feel it's more leaning towards problems with Ideascale, with how it's kind of presented. But I feel it should be about kind of anything Catalyst related and how we can improve that process and everything around it. But that's kind of my interpretation.
Yeah, thanks, George. Vince, what's your impression of the problem sensing section on Ideascale? Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm sorry. I'm looking through everything now. I want to make sure that I.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's basically. I was trying to find the link to that, and hold on a sec. Let's try and find it again. I'll post it in chat. Hold on a sec.
I also put the link to on the mirror board on the black picture. There is a link on the corner.
There's a link to it again. So
I've got the link. I'm looking at the site. I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe we probably should have organised a screen share of it. For next time.
But the basic point is that when you check at the screen I'm showing you, you will see the same things. There are different views where people, like Gerald said, put down problems they see in Ideascale, and there is a lot of ideas or fork the Gitcoin, great motivation to pay with ADA. So there are some things what are more like insight sharing, but they are in a gray area. So at start we didn't know. Then voter view on proposals is limited. So that's again quite more Ideascale and the process of this entire governance stack. No draft mode for co-proposers. So again, Ideascale, let me sort again Ideascale. So mainly focused on Ideascale, and we have different views of the same stuff. So do you want a good picture of seeing So yeah, it's just different ways to see the same problem. I'm not sure which could be the best.
I mean, also think it looks, I mean, to me, at first impression, it looks like a cross between like a suggestion box. But also, as Tivo says, and George has touched on, these suggestions seem to be mostly about Ideascale, although they're not all about Ideascale. Sometimes they're about other issues in Project Catalyst as well. So that's the impression I have. I don't know what the immediate, I know you're not familiar with it, Vince, so maybe we shouldn't dwell on that too much, but that's really, I don't know what be interested to see what your immediate impression of it is.
Well, I guess my immediate impression is I'm not sure how it fits in with Ideascale. Like I went back, this is just a UI, UX first, this is, and I'm
yeah,
not
sure.
I went back to, so I went to cardano.ideascale.com and looked to try to, how do I get back to, like if I didn't have the link to problem sensing, how would I get into problem sensing? And what am I, oh, so I have to go to the bottom, I click on it.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting a sense, so it looks like it's kind of like a Reddit for possible problems. Is that kind of what I'm seeing? It's not full proposals, or they are.
I mean, that's a good way of putting it. Carry on. I'm interested to hear your impressions.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting a sense of. It seems like a kind of like a Reddit blog. It's like a small Reddit type thing where you can create topics and have comment streams on differing projects, which I think is great. And I see a search box. Let's see.
I mean, there's also, I mean, the other feature which I think is there, that you can vote things up and down. And I think that also is indicated in each, if you go to get started, and then, yeah, so you can click up or down on each one, and I think that is recorded somewhere as well. Yeah, and then I think you can also, as you say, you can comment on each one as well. So, okay, but so that's our immediate impressions. So really, what I'd like to move on to is to think about, because we're really, those issues are, again, the kind of issues that you put on the suggestions, like what you said, Vince, about the user experience and how to find things out. Some people will put that on there and say, this is a problem with the user experience. What we're interested in is looking at how, well, first of all, could we use the data that is here? Because, I mean, how many records are there, Tivo, here?
281 when I look at the picture on the Mario board.
Yeah, yeah. If you go to the Mario board where Tivo's is located, and you see there that we have 281 problem sensing, or whatever you want to call it, problem sensing or suggestions, and 800 comments. And I don't know what you think about this. It doesn't really tell you much, does it? It's not really.
No, I guess it doesn't really explain to me what how I'm supposed to interact with it. Yeah. And it kind of goes back, I think, to the main page, the way it's integrated into the Ideascale.com website. It's there at the bottom after F4. And it feels like that should be way more prominent. If this is where all the ideas are supposed to go, and this is how I'm supposed to get an idea of what the ecosystem is focusing on. I'm surprised it's not more prominent. It's a little hidden. Really great stuff in here. It just feels hidden. I wouldn't know if this is like. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go on, George.
The two problems that I think are that could need addressing is, one, it's using exactly the same system as doing the proposals. So for beginners, it's like this instant kind of like you're using the same kind of feedback kind of process as you are doing proposals. So it's like this attachment to what is this for, and it's like it's hard to kind of, we know that because we've used the system enough, but like if you're using the same thing for the same kind of process feedback, as well as actually making proposals. And another thing we're doing is we're using challenge settings for proposals, all these kind of slightly different things. But this one is fairly different. So I think it kind of adds to a bit of confusion by having it just kind of hidden away as another kind of section in Ideascale. And I think the other thing is kind of the filtering of it. So it's like anyone can make anything, and because of this kind of lack of understanding fully of what it is, it's just kind of like it's not very curated. It's kind of, you know, there's some people who are doing proposals in there, there's some people who are just doing a test, you know, proposed like idea thing in there. It's just like it's a lot of noise because of that. So I you know, that obviously can happen in any place, but it looks like it's fairly more of a problem in this problem sensing category. So removing that and trying to, you know, just filter out the higher quality kind of like idea suggestions that people can work on would be beneficial.
Vince, do you think a better categorization would be helpful here?
I'm a big search nerd. I do a lot of NLP stuff in my day job. I always think that relevance is important, right? So, you know, trying to limit the amount of things that I have to look at for what I want to see. I think what George said about curation is that's one of the things also I would like to see here is I don't kind of know, there's no immediate, I see there's like a tags thing as a separate, there's a separate tab for tags.
Yeah.
But in the default listing under popular or recent, there's not really an explorer that lets me search through the space through those tags.
Yeah, there's a layer on top of that as well. As I think we use exactly the same tag system for the proposals as well, and anyone can add tags. So you could just make some really arbitrary kind of tag, and suddenly they get added to the system, and then you can use that in both the problem sensing and the proposals. And this is one of the problems that I know I'm going to have to damn solve when I get access to the proposal data. Is I'm filtering out the crappy tags that it's like, well, this is too granular or too abstract. It's like it's not useful. So this mixing those two things together makes it hard to add that kind of easy filter kind of size. And then, for instance, in problem sensing, there might be like 5 categories that are the key ones for where you'd want to filter, such as like something to do like Ideascale improvements or you know, learning resources, or certain things that are like key kind of categories within that could be improved that are about certain topics.
How do you? Sorry, George. How do you think you would arrive at those categories? How would you arrive? How would you come up with those categories yourself?
I just try and list out all the different parts of the process. So you're just thinking about the roles, thinking about the stages, thinking about the kind of key things that get, you know, involved in Catalyst, and thinking of those, which ones are, you know, should we group those? Are they important to separate and make more granular? For instance, you could have registration and then the voting app is separate, or you could just have voting as a single one. So you just think about what's the level of granularity for each of the main areas of Catalyst, and so it's not overbearing. So you kind of do it so there's, you know, there could be anywhere between 4, 10, but you wouldn't want to have like 50. Like it's like you find that sweet spot of what's the right granularity to kind of group things by, so people can be like, oh, I want to see how we're going to improve Ideascale itself and the key problems there, or the key problems in the voting side of it, or the governance.
And that might come out in a kind of like a tag cloud, where some tags are, as Vince was suggesting, like have more prominence than others, maybe. And then you might select that. But Vince, you were talking about searching because you're saying that as your preferred method, and I think you referred to NLP. Is that neural linguistic programming? And
natural language stuff.
No, that's language. Natural language. Sorry, I was getting confused.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots. Yeah, you can get pretty deep. And
a
lot of things. But I was just thinking like basic clustering. And just vector similarity searches and stuff like that, so that you can do more robust searches. I don't know how this search works. I noticed that it's I just typed in storage and it seems to be doing pretty good. So I mean, I think the search seems to be doing okay.
Okay.
I feel it's just a lot of information. I have trouble digesting what's there and what's quality. And I didn't even know until George had mentioned that these aren't proposals and they're not necessarily linked to a proposal. So this, I have like a love-hate relationship with Jira. I think probably half people, or most of us do. But it is actually like really useful to have things like ticketed, not ticketed, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like if one of these went on to become a proposal, would I know? Or would I have to search for the same people and topic in a different spot? I'm just curious. Like I actually don't know the answer to that.
I'm really glad you mentioned ticketing actually, because I think when Tivo and me were discussing this earlier, we were talking about statuses of things. It'd be nice to see the status of something. That's like a ticket, I suppose, isn't it? It's like, is this open? Is this closed? Is this in progress? You know, what's happening with this thing?
Yeah, I like that.
Because you look at all these problems out, I mean, I like to think of them as issues as well, maybe. And then, you know, I don't know what you think of that, Vince. I mean, because is that what you mean by tickets, or do you mean something else?
Well, I guess just, I'm still getting used to the Catalyst workflow, going from inception of like problem statement to ideation and proposal, all the way to funding, and then future work, right? Like tracking the work as it's actually going. And I don't know, like when I'm looking at the list, there's a lot of things that are in progress and some things that are in reserve. I guess I just don't know what that means, right? Like, what does that actually mean in terms of the Cardano ecosystem? Does that mean that it's in progress, like it's being worked on in a proposal somewhere, or does it mean that people are just actively commenting on it and it hasn't died out because of inactivity? You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess, and this is just, I've only been really in looking at this for a couple of months. I still have trouble kind of wrapping my head around all the key players and stakeholders and process. And so how this fits in with that, I think is.
Yeah, well, Vince, I've only been in Project Catalyst since March as well. So, and I'm also still confused sometimes by what comes next, and how it's like your point about making this more prominent. I agree with you about making it more prominent at the top of the page, maybe, and but that's more about idea scale. Again, that's about idea scale improvements. I mean, as we're getting towards the last third of this, I'd like to focus on maybe how we can resolve what we've done. We've discussed what we find are impressions of problem sensing, the problem sensing section, and how it's organized, and you know, like, and how we can search it, as you said, Vince, and how we might categorize it, as you suggested, George. And then what I'd like to think about now is how we could make it better, and what possibly how we could get the data out of it and analyze it as well. That's another thing. So, I mean, given the data that is there, because we just have, so maybe we should discuss, I suppose, how the data is structured. I don't know what you think, George, about that.
I guess the first thing that we mentioned about getting the data out is I think you could probably flick over the data and kind of determine, because there's not too many records to kind of get a rough idea of which ones would, because I've seen quite a lot of noise flicking through it just a minute ago. I don't know how many of them would be like super valid to actually move across to like a legitimate, I mean, a lot of them do look like proposals. That's what people thought they was happening. So I think there's quite a lot of nullified kind of data there. So I don't know how much effort it would be worth to, like, you know, making program, you know, like an API for making sure you can take that out at the moment based on the data quality. But from that, I think when you were mentioning like the stage and the status of it, I think that would be super valuable, because then you're kind of actually trying to, the kudos kind of does a job of, but even though people aren't really looking at this thing, so that's another problem. But if people are looking at it and people are directed to it, then just having some system to be like, I think this problem is important, is just one nice indication. You could do it in GitHub, yeah, or this, or something similar, just to be like, yes, I think I agree with this problem, and everyone's kind of saying this is an important problem to solve. But then without us doing exactly what you would do in the rest of Ideascale, where you have like the stages in Ideascale, you could do that here as well. But then you're really starting to get really convoluted on, we're using like the same system for going through stages here, and it's like I think I feel it needs to be dragged out and like part of like a feedback kind of, you know, tool.
Well, I'll give a kind of reveal, because the reason why we came up with this session originally was through discussions between me and Tivo about taking a snapshot of the data in this section. So not making an API, because that's too much work, as you say, but just getting an export of the data, and then, as you say, George, maybe cleaning it up a bit and doing some data analysis on it, and then maybe seeing. And the other thing is, I don't know what you think, I know is just work on this as a group in Swarm, really. So what do you think about that, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, I have actually do have time if
Yeah.
I can help.
Yeah, I mean,
happy to lend. I love my Python, and I can definitely do some data wrangling.
that's great. That's great. That's really good. So that's really, I mean, so really, I don't want to be doing all. I mean, because I'd like to hear. I mean, I'm just throwing this at you, I suppose. So it's kind of like, I hope you're taking notes, too. So really, it's like, what's your immediate impressions? What would you do with the data, Vince, do you think? Or you mentioned Python.
Well, I guess I would ask, like, how are you going to get? Are you going to scrape it, or do you have access to? I don't know how this data is being.
We can ask IOG to do an export of some of the data. I say one thing I'm working on with them, well, trying to slowly get across the line, is an API, so a wrapper around there is an Ideascale API.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can just kind of like export from that and give you some data, or at some point, like, we will hopefully have a wrapper so we can access it directly, some of this data. So there's a few different ways, but basically IOG are kind of at the moment the gatekeeper for just giving us those exports. I can't remember right now whether they can do the CSV for the Ideascale stuff, but I'm pretty sure they can do something along those lines.
I mean, I'm looking at the inspection on the page. It looks like whatever they used, I don't know what they used to build the site in, but it's producing pretty clean HTML with like links and stuff. It doesn't look like it would be terribly difficult to scrape if that was a thing that was necessary. And like it doesn't seem like it has like a ton of protections against hitting it with the scraper. It's only like 200 pages. So that's something. I think once I have the data, if I was gonna, I guess the question is what do you want to do with it, right? So I think putting it into a form that is clean and usable would be great. Maybe getting it into some kind of a, just sketching out like a JSON architecture that might be nice. If somebody has a Mongo instance or something like that down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, again, coming back to your twin themes there of search and what George was saying about categorization. I mean, our initial ideas was to export it to in possibly a JSON structure via to something like GitHub. Doesn't have to be GitHub. It can be something else. And the reason why we thought of GitHub is that problems are like issues. So we're thinking of because the GitHub interface is also a JSON architecture, and so you could export it as issues to GitHub issues, and then that becomes then the data exists on an open source platform. That's one thing. Okay, and secondly, then we can treat them like issues. So we could open them and we can close them and we can comment on them. So
that'd be pretty cool.
So that's the idea, but I'm not really. I mean, I don't want to be prescriptive, because what other ways are there to do this? Yeah, so I'll just put that over to. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of taking out of Ideascale, because I think I prefer Ideascale to use it what it's intended for. So it's kind of much more when you're explaining it, it's like, oh, you can do this in it, oh, and we do this in it, and then we just like, because of it's to do with idea innovation, and that's its kind of purpose. I'd rather. It makes sense to keep it nice and easy to explain of this is what that's for. You go here to make proposals or something that's very, very explicit. And it's not very well suited for doing what it's being used for now. And that I believe GitHub is a very good example of something that is much more well suited to kind of managing these issues, trying to actually add in more conversation and stuff, and kind of take it through the status. take it for these kind of status changes. So I think it's a big improvement. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what other solutions you could have, but and it's something like a repo like that. Or obviously like another simple conversion could be something like Rike and all these kind of things, and Trello. But I think GitHub's probably the better one. But it's that kind of like taking information and giving it flows and categorization and all that kind of stuff. And I think GitHub probably does that quite well.
Cool. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of great options, like George said. I guess it just depends on what you're going to try to bring back into the system. So if you want to bring back, like one thing that I'm noticing is that there's a comment section, and then there's some stuff with like finalizing. I'm not entirely sure what assess, finalize, refine. There's a submit proposals thing, which is great. So it looks like this ends at submitting a proposal, right? So once the proposal's been submitted, that's when this kind of jumps. Is
right.
that?
I'm not sure.
I think actually this is something what is also misrepresented in Ideascale. This assessing, there is no assessing on this problem state, problem sentence. And this seems to be just stages from the proposals which actually don't even go with it, because they only have one stage.
Oh.
I don't know if you're familiar with GitHub, Vince, but you can, there's things called issue templates that you can design. And issue templates are custom made, and we can take any JSON schema that we have here, and we can then build that around a GitHub issue template. So
I think it's a great idea, because I know GitHub integrates really well. Like you could bring the tickets back, right? So Ideascale could display GitHub activity. And I know GitHub does a really good job of once you get into like the pull request thing and stuff like that, it's much easier to track when people are actually responding or changing things, which could be great. There's a lot of stuff going on with like files and references and attachments and stuff. I don't know. I think GitHub is probably okay. I think GitHub can do most file attachments and track changes, and if someone were to like upload a new PDF and attach it to stuff. I think that works, right?
Yeah, you can also link
it up that way.
You can also, I mean, the great thing about it is that it records everything you put on it. So you can also, even if you don't put stuff on there, you can link to stuff. So let's say you have something like a PDF or something, which you wouldn't really want to put on GitHub. So you might put the PDF on, say, Google Drive or something. And then you could link to that from the issue template. I mean, what do you think? And also, what do you think, George, about a repo? If you set up a repo, you can also put all your documentation there as well, can't you, about what you're doing?
About as in for solving a specific ticket problem? No. Or as in just a general guide to how to use that repo?
How to use the repo, the whole thing that we're doing. You could document it there,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can have much better linking out for that and explaining for that, updating that and seeing how it changed over time. You've got all the backlog. It just feels like a better place for issue management, in its entirety.
And also what we were considering, and I'm interested in hearing both your views on this, is it's open source as well. So I'm not sure about the licensing issues of the data, George, but what we were hoping is just to make this more generally known and available to the Catalyst community. So then they can do pull requests, they can do their own analysis if they wish to. I don't know what you think, Vince, about that. Yeah,
I think that I've worked on a lot of data projects where like our first step is dumping stuff into GitHub. I guess it kind of just, and that totally works, especially when people can just be able to go in and download a file and then do whatever they want with it. I think it generally works until you have people trying to write back to that file or trying to make improvements to it. And then you get into issues of like having merge problems with a file, right? So like CSVs are notorious for this. If you have like 3 people trying to update rows and someone's doing it in Excel and they save it back and it just breaks everything, and all these, you get into some problems, right? So I think it would be nice to know kind of how the data, people want to interact with the data a little bit. if you're going to have a doc, the nice thing about creating a JSON is once you have a document model, is it worth looking at a free instance of a document database to just link to and just open it, right? So
something like MongoDB, you mean?
Yeah, something like MongoDB, right? I think you can get a few thousand records, a few thousand documents for free on that or something. And then people can query it. Then you get queryability, you get updates, and you get stuff like that. And you can do, but then there's problems with that too. So I think it just kind of depends on.
Yeah. So it might be a better repository for the data rather than analysis. It may be. This is something we can work out over and hopefully the next few sessions as well. Sorry, George, I was going to say something.
Yeah, I like that idea. I feel it might be a bit too much for what the scope of what this is. I feel you could realistically have 100, 200 kind of problem. Like how many problems are coming in? A lot of these problems aren't really even problems, so the actual rate of problems coming into this isn't too high. So the extra work of maintaining and just having any database on the side, even if it is quite simple, I don't personally feel is necessarily fit for purpose at the moment. If it got to a point where you're getting hundreds and hundreds of stuff, then moving out of GitHub and having something like that's more queryable and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think I'd probably stage it to GitHub first and then scale it.
A little stop us thinking here towards like creating a sustainable ecosystem for these problems, because the reason I would see why we even need to do this is that we want to help IoT to sort this stuff out, and we don't need a consistent basis. I vision that perhaps we do it. We do a few sessions here. We then the next one probably gonna take some kinds of these ideas what we already have here, and then look at that or categorize it, and then in the backbone it makes this either GitHub issues or like a suggestion of like links or beta files, so we can decide on that also, and have this process go through for like 1-2 times, and we get the sense of how this data goes, how it flows, and perhaps we find fast ways like, oh, in 30 minutes I can close all of this because I can capture the actual not problem sensing in this, and then you cut off like 50 things already, and that saves time from IoT to like process it. It's just important to give them that notice that, hey, this is something, a snapshot of that time we did go through these things, so you can get that out of your shoulder. And back to the George, like if we are not making an ecosystem of this repeating process, because I hope that when we show this categorizing and these statuses, they will see that it is needed and they will add this to the Ideascale, or they make it, okay, this is actually what we need, and here is a challenge or a budget to find people to start doing, and then it's another cool game. And then
Tiva, do you hope this can, if we could work together, do you hope this could demonstrate to Project Catalyst and IOG that the community can improve things themselves in their own workshops? And that we together, Vince, Tiva, George, and myself, we can work together and we can look at this, and then we can through these form sessions, and we can then go back to them and say, look, this is what, keep it simple, a nice snapshot, have a look at clean up the data, and then see what we come up with, and then take that back to, did you say, well, who would we be taking that back to, Tiva, do you think?
Probably Dor or Mark Clark or somebody from IoT, Danny, perhaps.
Okay. Would that interest you, Vince?
Yeah, it would. I think I'd like to know, I guess, I'm a very big outcomes person, so I think snapshotting the data is a great start, but anything with data needs a product, like what are we gonna, what question are we going to answer with the data? I think that helps inform a lot, right? Like how often does a question get asked, and what are you trying to answer? It helps inform a lot about data pipeline and process and tooling and stuff like that. Like for me, I guess like I brought up, I'm not sure which of these are already proposals, right? And then George had mentioned that he's looking at getting the proposal data as well. I don't know if that's a question we can answer right off the bat. Are some of these ideas represented already in active or you know, proposals looking for funding or currently funded proposals? Like, are there teams already working on this?
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt, but as we're getting to the close, we've got a few more minutes left in the session. That time has flown, I suppose. It's been great, but I'd like to finish up with actions, if we can. I know we covered quite a lot. I mean, would you be interested in creating a repository for this, George, or
what do you mean by a repository, like
or managing or maintaining the repo for it, or
yeah, so I mean, step one of it is getting access to the data, and I will be working on that again soon. So as soon as that becomes more of a fruition and I can talk to Marek about how to access all that stuff, and he's gonna, maybe he gives me a prod account so I can actually do it, you know, filter the sensitive data out myself. Okay. As soon as that is the case, then I can help with the first step of that, of getting a nice copy of the data, or some easy way for us to repeatedly get that data. And that's kind of step one, I guess. But like, yeah, I feel the outcome of this is saying there's a better way to manage these problems, and here is a potential solution, and that's what, you know, we're trying to present, kind of thing. But first step that I should be able to help with is hopefully data access, because I've already started to look at that. So I'm happy to help with, you know, making sure that data access is there, and then we'll take it from there and see what help you would need, if you know, if any.
Do you need us to push on the data access, or is that just something that we're all waiting on? Or
you can definitely help me, because I'll be working on that within the next week. So I'd love some pushes from people, like to just be like, we all want this, we all need this. This is, you know, this would help all of us.
Yeah, so for sure. Because we don't get the sooner we get the data, the sooner we can start working on this. And, yes. And going back to it, well, what can we do next week? Next week, I think, Vince, as you're talking about, we can start talking about, well, what we're trying to achieve.
Can I add 1 minute?
And what are our outcomes, you know? So maybe we can think about that. What do you think, Tivo?
Yeah, about outcomes?
For next week's workshops, we could talk more about, because we may not have the data next week. Let's be if you're pessimistic about it, let's say.
My question is, Vince, what is your Discord name? Are you willing to share this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm VA Brandon. Let me.
And then we could create Discord group, and just in through time before the next session, we can have a discussion about like just getting together with Miraboard and preparing for the next session. And 1 hour for a week, I think it's enough, because we don't want to rush this. We have everybody has things to do, but with 1 hour, I think we will get done a lot when we think about actions and we think about the things we have to do, because this right now, what we did was just getting the sense of what we are getting into.
That's great. Well, thank you, everyone. And but I suppose we can carry on discussing this anyway. So, but that was just the. I suppose also, if we set up a Discord channel, then we can link to announcements there, and we can say in advance more for other people who are joining, if what to expect. I'm thinking about, you know, other people getting involved as well. So and links to the Miro boards as well, I suppose. So
yeah, I was also on this thought process that it'd be great to have just like a Catalyst projects that are literally just to do with improving Catalyst within this community Discord. So we could have the problem sensing as literally as a channel, and then anyone who's doing work on that, or for instance, you know, the Cardano Catalyst site with Tivo and the rest and Phil have been working on, and my own, and Adagov, all of those kind of things. There, just sort of, like I currently have a channel. I don't want to put the effort into building another Discord group. It's like, it doesn't feel like super value add for anyone, or even myself. So having a channel dedicated to a few things under a grouping, I think would be great for everyone to be like, if you want to know what the community is doing, we've got chats here, and then the repos are all here, and then everyone can see it and get involved if they want to.
You mean in the Project Catalyst main server?
In the main one, yeah, that's
yeah.
this community driven kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that's a great idea. I think, I mean, part of it is knowing what other people are doing. I also work on Ideascale. So now I do, but I'm also with other projects as well. So I mean, I can speak to them about that, and I'm sure Ro would be interested.
Yeah, I speak to Ro plenty.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I mean, Vince, what we're talking about is like there's various projects looking at data improvements, improving interfaces and stuff like that, and some of them are looking for Catalyst funding. So what George was suggested was creating a section of the main server, a Discord server, which would provide, like, I suppose, practical work that's being done, guide channels that would, I suppose that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, this is better coverage, I think, for sure. Rather than, we're not like, it's not like Liquid where we need a completely separate Discord server. There would be some benefits just to be like everyone kind of sees. You don't have to go to like 3 different proper Discord, 5 different Discord servers to see what each group's working on. I feel it's better to kind of focus on improving that community one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, do you think that'll help with visibility of stuff, Vince?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually like what George was saying about not having more Discord servers. I hate having more than like 5. I'm pretty bad with Discord and Slack. I just unsubscribe from stuff. Sometimes I have like a bad day and I literally just unsubscribe from things that I'm not active on all the time. So it'd be nice to have it in the main Catalyst one, because I know I'm going to keep Catalyst up. That's what you're talking about, right? The main
exactly.
Catalyst.
The main server,
yeah. Like the swarm thing, the swarm group makes sense because there's so much going on in the swarm, and it's very, very collaborative and chatty. It kind of makes sense for that one to be separate. You don't want to have that in the main kind of one, but for like just project improvement stuff and all this kind of, like, it's more kind of just like announcing, oh, I've worked on this. Here's some, if you want to give some feedback. It's like there's not much like a ridiculous amount of back and forth. So like for me, I started a Discord thing for this project, for the side kind of site, but it's like, it's just there's not enough need for collaboration like every single day or every single hour for it to justify a server. So
it's almost like having an engineering section of the main server, isn't it? Because it's frustrating because there's quite a few projects that are working actively on UX improvements, and not just UX improvements, but data analysis, data visibility, like that was presented at Town Hall as well, through the CA guides and stuff like that. Your work, George, as well. And bringing that all together in a kind of engine room of Project Catalyst with better visibility and much more incentive to visibility between participants as well, so we can work together and help each other more as well on these things would be great, I think.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas I'm going to share in the next few days about trying to centralize or just like share some of these guides and translations and all of that. I'll dock up in the next few days. After I've now just finished the resources for what I've been working on, is like just trying to reduce that crossover. So some of the things that me, Phil, and Tiva are working on are a bit similar, but some of it's just because we're limited on what we can do.
No, absolutely.
So it's kind of just like I can't work on exactly what I want to work on. So hopefully, the more coverage like that in a nice space just means everyone's kind of aware of the crossover a lot more, because I can just keep updating it as I do things. So yes, I mean this is a separate topic, but yeah, we'll
and also
I'll bring it.
And also a place where people can go to get involved if they're new as well. So a session like this, hopefully, if we can keep it, of course we're trying to do some work as well, but hopefully I'm going to try and make it as accessible as possible to people who come in as well. So I'm good. If someone new comes along, then at the beginning I'll try and explain. I might have to explain. Well, I will explain briefly what we're doing, and so there will be that aspect to it. So there's the kind of some feedback of why I certainly get is that people, they'd like to know where to start, and have something to start on, and So I don't know what you think about that, Vince.
That's me. No, that's like raising my hand there.
Great.
So there's a lot going on, and it's very it's amazing, but it feels like I'm staring at a beehive.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out where. I just want to make some honey, but like, how do I get up in there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy. Here we can make some honey, and also a lot of us here actually are connected with different projects. You know, like which it can help you and people who come in new to this. We can, you know, if you're working on this, then this can open up. Oh, have you heard about this project, or have you heard about that project? That kind of thing. So I hope that be helpful to you as well.
It is. I'm learning every day. I ask a question. Somebody says, "Oh, check this project out on this end of the IO," and it's like, "Oh wow, didn't even know these people existed."
Yeah, that's great.
On that note, let's see what other people also do. Then you get your mind blown up with what else there is going on there. But yeah, that was nice. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay, so we'll go back to the main room now. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in the chill out room for a